In this screencast, I demonstrate the application of a simple workflow to some text that we've obtained from the HathiTrust. So first we'll open that text. The title is called Selections from Latin Fathers. And let's take a look at page 15. So here's the page image, which we obtained through the CI Hub's conversion of the text from the HathiTrust. You'll see that it certainly looks like a page of Latin text, and along the right-hand margin there are some line numbers. We've got some hyphenated words. Okay, that's what the text looks like on the page. Now let's see what it would mean to apply a workflow to that. Well, the workflow works against text, not images, so let's look under the plain text manifestation of this example, and we see right here a link to the Simple Perseus workflow. When we invoke this link, what's going to happen is that this text that we're seeing here will be loaded and prepared for the Perseus annotation service. So let's click on the link. A new window has popped up, and the text we see is loaded into this text area. The reason we've done that is to allow you to do a little bit of cleanup on the text prior to putting it into the annotation service. The annotation service doesn't know from line numbers, for example, and we'd like to get rid of things like hyphenation. So we're going to do that. I'll just do some very quick editing here. Here's another hyphen we can get rid of. Here's a line number. Another hyphen to remove. Okay, some more line numbers. And this is a partial line, so we'll remove that whole line. Okay. Well, that's a pretty good approximation of the text on that page. So what we're going to do now is submit that. And when we click the submit button, a remote service is going to be invoked. That's a service that is supported by the Perseus folks, and the first thing it does is it annotates this text in a very simple manner. It identifies sentences and words within sentences and puts that in a chunk of XML. After we run it through the annotation service, we divide up the sentences, and I load them into a table here. And prior to this page being loaded, we loaded those sentences into the Alpheus tree bank editor. So let's take a look at what these sentences look like, what the data behind these sentences look like from the tree bank editor. And if I click on this link here, the workflow will go out to the tree bank editor, which is not hosted by Bamboo at all, but hosted by Alpheus, and obtain the data for this sentence. So let's take a look at that. So here you see I've got a sentence, and we have in the sentence words, and for each word we have a form of the word. We have something called post tag, which is the grammatical markup for that word and so on. You'll notice that in these post tags they're all blank. Alright, so let's dismiss that. Now let's take this sentence and invoke the treebank editor. The treebank editor is hosted by Alpheus. So when I click on this, a new window is going to open, and we will see this sentence in the treebank editor. Alright, so click on that. Alright, well, that's the first word of the sentence. To see more of it, we start clicking on this plus button rather, and we see more of the words showing up. I'm not going to go all to the end of it. Now let's annotate one of these words with its part of speech. So we'll click on this word, et, and let's declare it to be a conjunction, and we'll set its lemma to be et. All right. You'll see the color has changed, coding it as a conjunction. Now let's save that, and let's go back now to our workflow within Hub 0 and retrieve the data again from Alpheus that we had edited just a moment ago. So we'll click on that. Up comes the data, and you'll notice now for the word et that we have in the post tag attribute a C indicating that it's a conjunction, and we've added a new attribute for the lemma, et. And so what this demonstrates then is the invocation of a couple of remote services, the annotation service, Perseus annotation service, and then the loading of the results of the annotation service into the Alpheus treebank editor. That produced entries corresponding to each sentence in this table. We were then able to load the remote editor. That's not running or managed at all by Bamboo. That's managed by Alpheus. We, in Bamboo, loaded our data into it, but they're running that service. We worked with their editor to tag a word in the sentence, and then we returned to our research environment and retrieved the data that had been updated in Alpheus's treebank editor and treebank data store. We retrieved that and we viewed it in our Hub 0 environment. Now, eventually, we will be able to save that data to our local object store for further processing. We aren't able to do that yet, and the reason for that's pretty simple. We haven't yet modeled derivative objects, that is, objects that are derived from a book object or part of a book object and are related to it. In order to store things meaningfully in a local object store, we need to be able to model what that object is, to give it a type essentially, and to describe what attributes and metadata apply to it. And in this case, amongst the metadata that we'll be interested in applying are its relation to the source, its provenance, if you will, in this book that we had obtained from HathiTrust. And we would not only like to know from whence it's come, but how it got there. And so we want to be able to document the workflow that produced this derivative object, this thing that we're looking at right here. So that's a fair amount of information to model and to build routines to store. So those are things to come, but at this point what we're able to show you is the invocation of remote services and remote tools in an integrated fashion on content that we obtained from the HathiTrust. Thanks.